I think most of us have at least got a very brief idea about how complex and how cinematographically brilliant the work is that we are very proud to have in our collection now as a permanent loan from the Stiftung Junge Kunst. And yes, in a way, this feels like really stepping into your work at once, as the beginning of the piece is a conversation of a contemporary Chinese artist and a curator in front of an audience. So we are having this little John Malkovich moment here now, sitting here and seeing you as the audience. And so this film that we see at the beginning is really operating in the same system we are talking about, in which we are talking and operating now. With the only difference, and this is important that it is a difference, that it takes place in contemporary China. And in China there is not only producers and the audience and everyone working around them, but there is also government interference. There is censorship always as the third person in the room or in the play. And this is of course a huge difference. And we see in the film that the censor and the artist, their roles blur, and in the end they somewhat exchange even. And yes, maybe you can tell us a little bit about your own experience operating in this field and how these experiences have found their way into your work that we have seen today.
Thank you, Werk. Yeah, so actually, this is not just my personal experience in China. I think for a lot of Chinese artists, they have a similar thing, similar experience. So for occasions like this right now, I have been experiencing this occasion a lot, like giving public lecture, and there's always going to be someone sitting among the audience, and that person probably, with a super ordinary look, but you can spot him right away because he's so strange, and sometimes they pretend they're like your fans of your art, and they brought your catalog with them and ask you to sign, and also they ask professional questions in art, because as their job as a censor, they have to spend a lot of time in the art world, so much more than I do. I barely go to see art openings or the art districts, because too much people. But their job is, they have to go to see all the art exhibitions, all the openings, to get to know all the artists. So I think, this is a very funny relationship we're having in China, and also in some way I think it's quite fascinating at the same time. Because sometimes the censor, they're in a disguise, right? They pretend they're like a fans of yours, and they don't know who they are. So they came to you and they ask for a contact of yours. So we're like a WhatsApp friends, and we're like a Facebook friend, something like that in the Chinese social media. So it's quite funny. I consider this is also a new form of communication between me and authority, because I didn't block them, I just, every time I say something, sometimes the things I post on internet or on social media, it's a little bit politically incorrect in Chinese context. I criticize the government or I criticize anything, I just post it. And sometimes they likes my post, and sometimes they even repost my stories. So it's like for some special moments, I feel like we're communicating with each other in a very special way, and with each other's identity hidden, and so I've been thinking, because they've been seeing so much art in their life for decades, for a lot of years. And maybe there's just one moment, for them it's quite realistic. For some art, they see, and the art. I just remember, one thing. There's a line from a film. It's what's the name of the film? It's called a V for Vendetta, right? There's an American film, V for Vendetta. So there's the line in the film. It says, the politician use lies to cover the truth, but artists use lies to tell the truth. So I was thinking maybe there's just one moment for those senses, and they're seeing some art, and that could shake their belief, and to make them betray, or to question the system or the faith they used to have. So basically, I think that's the starting point. And but for myself, it's I do think this censorship thing is not just about China, and it's not just about now. So for instance, in China, we've been having this censorship for thousands of years. So it's been there the entire time. So we Chinese artists, we all have solutions for that because we've been facing this for thousands of years already. And we know how to deal with that. And we know how to rely on all kinds of different rhetorics, metaphors to just like I said, to use lies to tell the truth without get yourself into like a serious trouble. But you tell the truth. But I do think, right now it's about the time. It's a different, it's some issues in the society is quite urgent that I cannot dodge anymore, relying on any rhetorics or metaphors anymore. We have to deal the issues in a face-to-face situation. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that you speak about the past and those thousands of years that censorship is at work, and the differences that there are today. So your work also makes a broad historical context. Starting maybe, I think the earliest thing is the May the 4th movement in 1919, and then going on to the contemporary art scene in the last 3 decades, maybe a little bit more than 3 decades, where the leitmotif of the work is the set of performances, the 7 sins, which were forbidden performances that sort of spontaneously were incorporated into this huge China avant-garde exhibition. And this historical context, makes so the 7 sins are the basis, the most important starting point. And I would like to know how important are those 7 sins? How much are they known among people in and outside the art world? So this point of reference that most of us don't know, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about how important this set of performances has been.
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, actually, that exhibition, the China Avant-Garde exhibition, was a milestone in the contemporary art history. Yeah, because just like I said, that was the first collaboration between the contemporary art in China and the Chinese government. But also at the same time, it was the end of everything because of those 7 performances. Yeah, and one of the performances was by an artist named Xiao Lu, a female artist. So basically, she has a pistol, a gun, and she shot 2 fires. She shot 2 bullets right at her installation in the museum, in the crowd of the people. So that makes the exhibition shut down immediately. And also the artist got taken to the police station, got questioned, right? And but I think that importance of that performance could be described as something like if an artist just holding a gun and pointing at some direction, to pointing at a target, that described the condition of the Chinese society back then in 1989. But to shot the bullets to fire, so it's like the starting fire of the movements later. Everybody knows about that. So the China Avant-Garde exhibition took place in February, but actually the student movements took place like 2 months later. So when we look back at history with a post-history perspective, we can see there's something, linked these two instances together. So, but actually, I think this is the reason why I try to connect this art history with another historical moments in the same year. And also, by doing this, I also try to connect the beginning point of the entire democratic movements in China, which is 100 years ago, in 1919, the May 4th movements. That was the starting point of everything. And also, I was trying to elaborate on a concept that I have, or inspiration that I have in the second part of the film. So just, one day I was reading some newspaper. It said, we're having an earthquake in China right now. And that earthquake was like quite severe, caused a lot of people died. And, but the scientists said that earthquake was not something new. That earthquake actually was an aftershock of another earthquake happened 200 years ago. So that was a strong inspiration for me. It's like while you're living in the era right now, how can you tell actually the situation you have is connected with something 200 years ago? So basically, I use this concept to connect all the democratic movements in China. So basically, when we look back to 100 years ago, when we look back to the May 4th in 1919, when we look back at all the agendas and the purpose of those students they're trying to achieve, but actually they failed. But in the historical book, we say that the May 4th movements actually is only 4 days. But maybe if we can live longer enough, or we have the future generation, maybe 200 years later, one day, when the country eventually achieve their goals, achieve their purpose, and we can redefine the history. We could say that, okay, the May 4th movement actually lasts for 400 years. So that's a long history. That's a totally a whole new perspective to look at the history. So that means all the revolution we're in right now, all the fight we're in right now, it's gonna be something long term. It's not gonna be something just 4 days.
And the seven sins, so to say, are one part of it. 70 years later that happened, and we are now again 30 years later. So yes, I think that's exactly the point where your work really very explicitly and also bravely, I think, addresses the question of the role of art in society. So the question whether the historical context of a work is just there to explain its meaning and its existence, or if it's the other way around, whether art actually can change its historical context in the future. So it's about the question, can art have an impact on society? And that's the question that the characters in your film discuss. And it's a question that is open for us today. If you, as someone working in the system, how do you yourself see the impact that your work actually has, which is probably quite specific, as we said, it cannot be shown everywhere. Or this work, other works, yes, but this work is not so easily to be shown in mainland China, at least. So, what's your personal attitude to that?
Yes, I think, to me personally, I think the most important thing of art is you still have the freedom to make, and you still have the space to express. I think that's quite important, right? But in such a chaotic situation all over the world right now, it's not a perfect time for making everything into something like a short term. And I think for me, I just remember, when I did some research about the art scene in China during the Cultural Revolution, I found out something quite surprisingly. It's something new to me. Actually, during the Cultural Revolution, during the 2 decades, all the people nowadays, we just believe that we only have a mainstream art in China, the propaganda art in China. That's the only thing visible, actually, during that time. But when you do the research, you found out that, actually, during that 2 decades, there's a lot of underground art, a lot of poets, and the artists, painters, and the writers, and they've been doing something different. They still kept criticizing and reflecting. So, but they manage their way. They have their life, They didn't get killed, They had their life, and they plant the seed for the future. So there's one inspiration I have for a long time. During the Cultural Revolution, there's a famous novel called The Second Handshake by a writer named Zhang Yang. So basically, the second interrogation, the title of it is the inspiration from The Second Handshake. So during that time, of course, that book cannot be published. If it got published, the author got killed. But how people manage that? So people borrow, they pass that book one to another one. And when you receive that book, you just handwrite the entire book, copying the entire book overnight, and then you pass the book to another person. And so that book was so popular. But at the same time, the author, the writer, was still hidden and secured, quite safe. So I was always thinking, if we don't have such book, The Second Handshake, if we don't have such underground art during the Cultural Revolution, so when the Cultural Revolution get ended, so during 80s, we're not going to have the scar literature in China that is trying to reflecting the past. And we're not going to have the new Enlightenment movements. And of course, we're not going to have the democratic protests at the end of the 80s. So basically, that's something, I think probably that's something similar to what I'm trying to do. Just I don't want to get myself too much exposure in China, or show this piece publicly a lot to get too much attention from the authority. But I think I need to have the freedom to make. I need to make it. I need to say something out. And you cannot say something out when you feel like 100% perfectly safe. You have to say something out when the time is there. And but this is something not going to be a great result or outcome right away. So something will happen in the future, just like in The Second Handshake, the impact of the novel, what it has done to the entire China 20 years later. It's planting the seeds, it's saving the possibility and the potentials for the future. So I think that's something most important to me. That's the priority.
Actually, this, what you just said, about the importance of carrying on, even though it's not very public, very broadly publicized and in the daylight, so to say. It brings me to, I feel it reminds us also of the fact that we are sitting here tonight, and today it's the 75th birthday of our basic basic law of the Federal Republic. And we are looking at this from a very different position, of course. And I think we do miss the point if we look at your work and that the struggle that you are in, if we only perceive it as sort of a story from a far away land with a different system, which is very interesting and very touching. But I have the feeling that we also look at it and that it reminds us of the fact that that what we experience now is something very precious, which is always at stake and needs to be defended. And this is a perspective that I think is also very deeply written into the conversations that the protagonists of your work have. And so maybe my final question would be, as someone who exhibits his work internationally in the West, more openly and publicly in this context as we are now, and the work will be in our collection and will be shown for the next, more or less the next year probably. So yeah, how you feel or how you envision the responses, or what responses you receive also from the Western audiences, how they perceive your work, and what you maybe also demand of them and what you expect of them to how to react. That would be interesting for me, I think, and maybe for all of us.
Yeah, just like I said before, I think this entire occasion is just like a statement to me. I think when we look back the history and look back the past several decades, all over the world, you know, we could say the past several decades is the year of globalization. And I think there's some problem. We already see something wrong with it, right? Already see some outcomes of this globalization. When we look back, we can say that, okay, the globalization, the key facts of a globalization is something like expansion. And it is for communication. So like under this context of multiple culture, so all different culture, all different nations, they try to share thoughts, right? But by doing this, actually, they didn't do a lot of things in a very in-depth way. I have to say that. That's because when we look at our reality right now, we found out that actually for the past several decades, sometimes we didn't even find the real issue, and we didn't try to solve them. So I think right now it's it's about a time it's quite different. So everyone got stuck in their own dilemma. Everyone got stuck in their own complicated situation. The only thing you have to do is you have to find your own issue, the real issue, and you try to analyze it, and you try to find a solution. And then at some certain points, all the different dilemmas, different societies, different contexts, they could be each other's inspiration. So I think this is quite important for me to show my works just outside China. I think that's quite important. And inside China, I still have another way. I do like underground screenings with friends or people I trusted. But I think another form of discourse I could have, which is a perfect occasion, will be something like this internationally. Yeah, I remember in the history, you know, in the 70s during the Vietnam War, you know, there's something quite inspirational. You know, there's the island in Japan that's the famous island Okinawa, right? So actually, the people, the citizens in Okinawa, they protest the occupation of a United States military in their land, right? So they went to the airport, they protest, and they try to stop the plane to take off, the war plane to take off. And when the journalist asked the people in Okinawa, they asked them, why you're doing this? And the answer is, you know, they say, so if there's 1 hour we can try to delay the war jet to take off. On the other side, for the guerrilla in Vietnam, they have 1 more hour to prepare for the war. So actually, this is something really inspirational, right? So this is like my battles includes yours. My combat is not just about myself, it's also about yours. So by making such a work, I think this is the situation we're facing nowadays. We're sharing something together. It looks like we're all stuck in our own dilemmas, but eventually, we could be each other's beacon. We could be each other's inspiration, as long as we can really dig into the dilemma.
Thank you very much. I think that's. Thank you very much for sharing this.
Thank you, Werk.
Thank you very much for sharing your work and your thoughts with us tonight. And I think now it's time to celebrate. So everyone who is taking part in the dinner can use the elevator to the 4th floor, and everyone else is really welcomed from all our hearts to look at to watch the piece again. It'll be open until 9 o'clock tonight, so take the opportunity to take a second look at the second interrogation by Wang Tuo. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Werk. Thank you.